Welcome to the Work Hard, Play Hard podcast. My name is Rob Murgatroyd, and I'm a former doctor turned lifestyle entrepreneur. Each week, I interview some of the best minds on the planet on the science of achievement and the art of fulfillment. Come take this journey with me. Excuses are over. It's time to live.
I'm investing in memories. I'm investing in family. I'm investing in my community. We have, 300 people, our clients at our home every year to celebrate the business that they've been a part of. What caused the problem in 2007 wasn't necessarily the market. It was not watching what was going on around us and not being prepared for it. You can use the opportunity of the losses that you had in order to impact other people and help them. What somebody might be going through right now, somebody else might be going through worse or less, and they need that encouragement.
Okay, before we jump into this interview, I want to invite you to be considered for my 2019 Traveling Mastermind. So go to workhardplayhardmastermind.com and fill out the application, and we'll jump on a call to see if you're a great fit. This year, we'll be in Boston doing lots of cool things like training with Tom Brady's trainer, Alex Guerrero. In the middle of the year, we'll be heading to Monaco doing things like vintage car rides through the French Riviera. And then we're going to wrap the year in Florence, Italy, doing things like truffle hunting and hot air ballooning over Florence. Look, life is all about fulfillment, and I really try and walk the walk. So if you are looking to be part of our tribe of 28 high-achieving entrepreneurs that are in the 6- and 7-figure range, fill out your application at workhardplayhardmastermind.com to be considered. So think of the mastermind as having two parts. The first is the trip itself, and the second part is what goes on over the 4 days within the mastermind. Our group of 28 entrepreneurs will help you brainstorm and accelerate what you want to achieve in 2019. And we'll do that through a variety of different exercises, brainstorming activities, breakout sessions, goal-setting sessions. You know the drill. So go to workhardplayhardmastermind.com, fill out an application, and we'll jump on a call to see if you're a fit. All right, let's jump into today's episode. What's up, everybody? This is Rob Murgatroyd, and welcome to another episode of the Work Hard, Play Hard show. This episode features Steve Valentine. You can find him on Instagram and elsewhere at Steve D, like David, Valentine. I don't know what his middle initial is, but I'm going to make it up. Steve D. Valentine. So who's Steve? Steve is a third-generation real estate investor. He has had some high highs and he's had some low lows in the world of real estate investing. So I decided with Steve that rather than talking about all his successes, we would take a vertical dive into the lows, because that's where all the lessons are. When you can't feed your family and you have to figure out how to do it, you become resourceful. And we went into situations like that and many others in this episode. He was incredibly honest about how he had to pull himself out of a ton of debt and turn his mental focus around. As they say, you see the glory, but you don't know the whole story. We went deep on this one, and I think you're going to get a ton out of it. Before we get into the episode, a lot of people have been asking me about private coaching. I'm working with a select few people that are now ready to make a change. Not thinking about it, ready. If you fall into that category, go to workhardplayhardcoaching.com and fill out an application, and we'll jump on a call. All right, please enjoy this conversation with Steve Valentine. Steve, welcome to the show.
What's happening, my friend?
I am beyond freaking excited that you're here. I'm going to do the best I can to be a professional. I hate when I have a friend on the show because it just all goes to hell in a handbasket. But we are going to give it a shot. So in the intro, I've talked a bit about the kind of work that you do and real estate, et cetera. So the audience is pretty familiar with your background. So it gives us an opportunity to kind of dive in a little bit. And I think a great jumping off point would be to talk about, honestly, when was real estate not in your life? I mean, from your grandmother Essie to your parents to your wife, it's in your blood. Has there ever been a time when you remember not having real estate in your life?
Yeah, when I was a kid, I had no desire to do anything that my parents were doing. I didn't want to work as hard as they did. I didn't want any of that. And actually in high school, I started building trucks and got into the automotive field. And that's actually where I went after high school. I worked at a bunch of automotive shops. And one day, God blessed me with somebody stealing all my tools, and I went to work for my dad.
Someone stole your tools. And why was it that was the thing that sent you over the edge? Why did you just not go out and get some more tools? Did you look at it like, as divine intervention that, if my tools are gone, obviously I'm not supposed to be in the car business, or what was it?
It was really it was an opportunity to look around and go, okay, the debt and the money that I'd put in the investment into the automotive business, I just got a check to get out of it. And, I was rolling around on a creeper, which is a little rolly thing, on a hot pavement in August, and just kind of looked and said, do I really want to do this the rest of my life?
Why do you think that you resisted the family quote unquote business? Was it just the obvious that you just wanted to rebel in your own way? Or did you just feel like you wouldn't be good at it? Or what was it?
I always had a passion for vehicles, for automotive, for fast cars, big trucks, and building them and get creative with them. And it was fun when I started it and I enjoyed it. But then when it became a job and it was something that I had to do day in, day out, it wasn't enjoyable anymore. And I just thought maybe there was more to life, and seeing what my mom and dad were doing and trying to take that opportunity and see if there was a different path I could go.
All right, well, let's talk about your dad, because I know that your dad was a big reason why you're in this industry. Mm-hmm. What is the major lesson that you learned from him that is still fueling you today?
Nothing comes without hard work.
That's interesting. So he did real estate differently than the way you do it, yeah?
Correct.
Maybe you can talk a little bit about the difference between how he approached it and what lessons you learned in, that regard for how you want to do things a bit differently.
So real estate's one of those things that it's a relationship business. And my dad, being in the business 40 years, lived through 18% interest rates, lived through all the crazy crisis times. And every time he reinvented himself, you had to get creative, you had to figure things out. And so that was one of the things that he really left me, was the creative side of real estate. And real estate can be looked at a bunch of different ways. And it's a way that you can solve a problem by looking at it or hovering it from 30,000 feet, because not everything has to be done the same exact way.
He sort of had a different way of approaching it. But, as with most industries, there's a boom and a bust. And your dad certainly has lived through many of those. Mm-hmm. And we're never fully prepared if we haven't seen those booms and busts before. And I know that you have been a part of it. Can you maybe talk about some of the lessons that you learned in and around 2007, when the walls were literally crumbling down around you, and perhaps how you would do, or how you are doing things differently now?
It's interesting. Before my dad passed, he told me, he says, you've seen what most people have not seen or will ever see. And that's the market shift in that 20 years, from it peaking and spiking to it dropping to it starting to come back, to the foreclosure crisis, to where we're at a more stable market again. And so when I look back at the lessons learned as far as what caused the problem in 2007, wasn't necessarily the market. It was not watching what was going on around us and not being prepared for it. And also taking our eye off the ball. I remember the first time my dad said, hey, I think we should, start a painting company, and it's just a couple of guys in a van. Well, 2007 comes around, we had 7 different construction companies, and we had taken our eye off the ball of real estate. So we were working and managing all these pieces of the industry that weren't our real bread and butter, and it caused us to not see what was actually happening in the market. And so now you look at things, and part of the courses and things that I teach real estate agents is how to always be prepared for any market, no matter what it's doing. Because right now, yes, the market's been good and we've been blessed with a good market, but what's the preparation, which a lot of people talk about? Well, what happens if another bubble happens? Well, I can tell you right now that I'm going to be working and helping more people to understand the investment side. And that's one of the reasons that I got so involved in the wealth building aspect, is that, I want people to be prepared for opportunities when they happen, not look back at the opportunities that they regret not being able to take advantage of when they did happen or when they did occur.
All right. So speaking of those times when they did occur, you had a point where you were $1 million in debt. And I guess the question is, how did you get yourself out of that debt? And more to the point, how did you get over the emotions that are associated with that feeling of hopelessness?
Oh, that was a rough 2 years. That 2006 to 2008, to answer that question, it had to do with hard work, but it also had to do with learning from the lessons that happened and making sure that we did right by the people, because that $1 million was also some personal debt to people that had invested in us. And, my wife and I just agreed we wouldn't file bankruptcy. We'd do the right thing and we put our heads down and we would grind it out. And I remember doing sprinkler repairs and, trying to do anything I could, including hiding cars every other month until we could figure out how to make it. And it was hard work. We talked about it earlier, what gets you there? Well, that time was really about hard work. And, the thing that caused me to really, really dig in was December 2007, watching my wife walk out the door and going to wait tables. And I'm sitting with my 2 toddlers, and I was a failure of a man at the time. But my only choice was not to wallow in it. It was to, pull up my bootstraps and go to work and start figuring it out. What do I need to do? If it's 16 hours a day, whatever it is. And then 2008, we were given, and I think that this is probably the biggest thing, is that we were given an opportunity. There was an opportunity in front of us that our broker gave us to work what we call the REO business, or the foreclosure business. Our brokerage at the time had an account with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and there was an issue with it. And she called and she says, "Do you have $10,000 and do you want this?" And I'm like, yes and yes. I did not know where I was going to get 10 grand, but you say yes and figure it out later. And that was my opportunity. That was my step up, grind it out, figure it out. Nobody really knew what was going on with the account. And I just went balls to the wall, 100% on this. And it was our way out of debt. So that time frame from 2008, 2012, we'd actually paid off all that $1 million of debt, including our tax liabilities and some of the other stuff. We grew our business, and it was just hard work and knowing that I never want to lose this opportunity. So I'm going to do everything that it takes to hold on to it and be the best at it that I can.
All right. So there's a lot of people that are listening that, have a dirty little secret that they're not sharing. They have a piece of their life that they feel shameful about, and maybe a little bit embarrassed, and maybe because of a downturn in their own business, or maybe a downturn, maybe they took a stab at investing in real estate, but one thing led to another. They're in debt, and maybe now they're living in an apartment. They have some tax challenges, kind of like what you were just talking about, et cetera. And they're now starting to quote unquote accept it as their new identity. And they're like, this is just the way it is. I fucked up and I got to live with it. What advice would you give them? Let's get into, out of mindset a little bit, because clearly it's, you got to do the work, but let's give them something, that's more tactical. What if the person has bad credit, not a lot of money in the bank, tax situations, but believes they're listening to you, they're following you on social, and they're like, this guy looks like he's got the world by the balls here. I mean, like he's got a wife he loves, he's flipping houses, he's buying new ones, he's making money, he's got a team. What advice would you give them to just start with the first one, the first thing, the first rehab, the first investment, the first foreclosure. What does that conversation look like with the mortgage person where they're afraid to even call the mortgage person because of their situation? How do you help those guys?
It's putting one foot in front of the other and making a plan. You talk about goals and you talk about mindset. And so let's start with the little things. It's funny is that, we listened to Dave Ramsey a lot when we were going through those times. And there's a lot of people out there that have listened to Dave Ramsey and the snowball effect of paying the smallest things off first and creating victory, which is taking the small steps. Rob, I had a spreadsheet that was 3 pages long of all the people I owed money to. Some of the largest debts were American Express at somewhere around $300,000. And we literally put everything on a spreadsheet and we looked at the smallest thing and we started. We were making $10 payments to a $140,000 note. It was the little things that got us rolling. And as we started being able to take those little steps, it started building confidence. And it started just giving us the ability to not worry about our credit. We lived in a rental house. We had a couple cars. We knew we weren't going to be able to buy any more cars for a while. And it was the little steps. And we just started one foot in front of the other. It's $25 here, $10 here. Next month, I might be able to do a little bit more. But we also made sure that we didn't set ourselves up for failure again. Setting yourself up for failure would be making agreements that you can't afford or you can't stick to. So we made sure that we were putting some money aside for savings. So we had a little bit of cushion and we were making sure that we weren't overcommitting ourselves. Even if we were making more money, we stuck to our plan and we kept going through that process until 2012, everything was paid off and we were able to buy a house again. And it's one of those things you can use the opportunity of the losses that you had in order to impact other people and help them. What somebody might be going through right now, somebody else might be going through worse or less, and they need that encouragement. And I remember, I had a choice in 2008, 2007, somebody was writing an article and I was nominated for this broker agent magazine. Well, it's supposed to be about everybody's successful business and all this other stuff. I had already done what was happening to everybody else or at the brink of happening to everybody else, which was losing my house to foreclosure, juggling cars, losing all my credit, not having any money. And I chose to take that article and that step and chose to release all the information of all of our failures that had happened. And this is in my industry, it's in my backyard. And so you come out, and what ended up happening was the impact that article had, the letters, the emails from people are like, you have no idea how much that encouraged me that it'll be okay. It's emotionally hard at the beginning, but one step at a time, things get better. And guess what? We all can recover from debt. We can all recover from losing it because guess what? There's no debtor's prison. Well, IRS might put you there if you're really bad, but there's no debtor's prison. They can call, they can haunt you, they can do all that stuff. But you are the only one that can let you feel bad about the situation. You can't let the creditors and the psychopaths that call you on the phone and beat you down. You have to take control over that. And you have to just stay there and stay in that lane in order to come out of it.
Okay, but there is So the step one is, it sounds like the fastest path for somebody would be to get Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover, right?
Yep.
All right. So just begin with that. Follow the steps that he has in there. But then there's some reality, and the reality is that if the credit, and I guess this is in the form of a question, if their credit is bad and they're in debt, they're likely not going to be able to get a mortgage. Is that right?
Correct.
All right. So just to give people, the situation, that you were in, let's say that there's, $100,000 in debt. We'll take a round number, $100,000 in debt, some bad credit, some tax situation. What does somebody have to do to get, after they, follow the Total Money Makeover? What does it need to look like? Does it need to be pristine, where it's an 800 score, where there's no debt, there's no tax situation, and, they've got 20% to put down on the house? Or is there a spot that's in the middle where it isn't great, but they can begin to start repairing? Like what are we looking at before you can take that next step?
There's a total spot in the middle. I mean, there's loans out there with 600 credit scores with 3% down, and they're fairly easy to obtain. The big thing is getting your credit back on track so that you don't have lates on your credit cards, you don't have collections. And that's what took me so long, is that there was a lot of collections on my credit. And so we had to work through those and give it time. And here's the hard part. So many people get focused on, well, I don't own a house right now, or I can't buy a house. It's not the end of the world. The reality is a lot of people took on debt and bought houses when they shouldn't have back in 2005, 2006, because they had fear of missing out. They were fearful of not getting the house. They were fearful of never being able to buy a house again or afford one again. And the reality is those people ended up going into foreclosure rather than having a plan to get into a house on their time and in something they can afford. And that's really what I've gone back with people and started walking them through the process so that they are set up for success when they do buy a house. And some people, Rob, here's the crazy thing. Homeownership is awesome, but homeownership is also expensive versus renting. I was telling my wife the other day, I'm like, can you imagine how much money we'd still have in our pocket if we were still renting the house that we did for 5 years? Because we never did anything to it. And we've dumped hundreds of thousands of dollars into the house that we have now. But you start looking at it, it was the right time when we got there. But there's so much that can be done. And the big thing is starting. Where do you start? You start by talking to a lender and having them pull your credit. And they have plans. They can give you an exact guideline on these are the things that you need to do to get back on track to homeownership.
Do you have, is this local per state? In other words, people listening that, are in Michigan, do they have to find somebody local, or can they use anybody nationally? How does that work?
So my best advice on that is to find a local mortgage broker rather than the big banks. Unfortunately, the big banks, as far as service goes, they've got certain guidelines they stick to. Sorry for any of those of you that are doing mortgages for the big three, but I just feel like there's a little bit more specialized attention in the lending side. And the best place to get a good referral for a lender that's got great reviews and great performance would be for their local real estate agent who they trust, to reach out to them and ask them, who do they use for lending?
So you mentioned something a second ago. I want to talk about investments. I want to talk about rehab, investments, and then we're going to talk a little bit about fulfillment and your wife in a sec. But the first thing I want to ask you about is what you just mentioned, which is Grant Cardone. Grant Cardone is not a believer in buying real estate for your own home.
Yep.
For a lot of the reasons why you just mentioned. Because when you add up the amount of money that you dump into it and how much profit you make, you can rent something for less. What's your take on that?
I think everybody it depends on what you're buying for or what you're renting for. I understand exactly where he's coming from, but here's the other thing. I can take the $200,000 or $300,000 that I say I've invested in my home that we've renovated. But here's the thing. I'm investing in memories. I'm investing in family. I'm investing in my community because I've brought the prices up in the neighborhood, and my wife and I are having memories in that home. We have, 300 people, our clients, at our home every year to celebrate the business that they've been a part of. And so for me, and I understand you can rent places and do all those different things. I get it. But, my kids come there, their friends are there. I think every night we have 5 or 6 teenagers running around our house. And it's a place for memories for me. And that's why I'm investing in it. There's no price tag for it at the end of the day. And yes, you could do it on the rental side, but here's what happens if you rent where you live. You have no certainty and you have no guarantee. If you look back at the amount of people that thought they had 5-year leases on houses back in 2009 and they were paying their rent, and all of a sudden they get a notice and I get to knock on the door and say, sorry, the house has been foreclosed on. And they look at you and say, well, I've been paying my rent every month. What happened? Well, I don't know. You'd have to talk to your landlord. So there's no certainty. See, I know that I'm the only one that can make my household certain by paying the mortgage. Nobody can take that away from me unless I stop making the mortgage. If you're renting, the landlord could decide to sell. The landlord could stop making payments on it. The landlord could die and the family inherits the house and wants to sell it. So that's my only take on homeownership, is that you don't have any certainty and you don't have any guarantee. And I think part of, Grant Cardone's message is also the fact that, well, you also have the uncertainty of the value of the property. Just like 2009, the prices dipped. So now the $500,000 house that you had is worth $250,000. But guess what? If you can afford the payment, it doesn't matter what it's worth. It only matters what it's worth when you go to sell it.
So it sounds like, it's an interesting conversation, right? Because it sounds like arguments are made on both sides. And at the end of the day, there's not a clear winner. You could argue that, you can argue the certainty. Like, I'm sure that in 2009, there were a bunch of people who got knocks on the door that, you got to lose your house. But that's not the norm, right? And you could also argue that you could make, great memories in a house, but you can also argue that somebody can knock on the door and say, hey, look, I'm not going to renew your lease. I decided that, I don't want the headache anymore. I want to get rid of it. So It's a personal decision that you got to make for where you fall in that line. But it sounds like from a pure, look, nothing is ever purely economic, but from a purely economic decision, it sounds like it's split down the middle, and there's not a clear winner. It's an emotional decision.
Right, but here's the other point in that. Homeownership is the first and cheapest way to start investing in real estate. Remember when I said, a few minutes ago that there's loans that you can get in a 600 FICO score with 3% down?
Yeah.
Well, if you're going out to buy your first home, like I do with my buyers, I said, hey, I want you to realize that we're going out to look at your first home, but this is also your first investment. And if we have the mindset of keeping these homes, it's the cheapest way to enter into it. And because if you're buying it like I do, where you have to put 20, 25% down, you have to have a better FICO, you have a lot of cash infused that a lot of people don't have. But if you take a 20-year-old and say, look, if you buy your first house, it doesn't have to be pretty, it doesn't have to be extravagant, but it's going to make a great rental property in a year, you have that first investment with 3% down. Now you go to year 2 and you're going, okay, I'm ready to move on to the next one. Well, now they can go and do the same thing. And that's what my wife and I did early on. And we did really well, in that 2000 to 2006 timeframe before the market crash, where we were moving from one house to the next. And we were creating equity, and then we were keeping as rental properties.
While we're there, let's talk about, your wife and your relationship. So, she's definitely the one that wears the tool belt. You're just the one that looks pretty.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's obvious. We can see that. Let me tell you what I love. Looking in from the outside, when I watch your social media, and it's almost like I feel like I'm watching a television show. I feel like I'm right there with you. So I gotta take my hat off to you. You do a great job on social of truly being real. Like, there's not a lot of bullshit with you. And that's one of the things that I love about you. You're just an honest, real guy. And that comes through in the work that you do on social. But the question, I suppose, is when I see you and your wife going into, what I'm going to term a shithole house, what it looks like to me, I'm like, oh my God, what the hell is he going to do with that? And then it looks like a completely different house because you guys went in there, flipped it. And you talk about, the amount of money that you made. It's like literally watching a TLC television show. Talk to me a little bit about that side of your life, because I'm a little bit confused about what it is that you do with real estate. And maybe the answer is all of it. So looking in from the outside, I see taking a buyer out to buy a house, like standard real estate stuff, going into a house and rehabbing it, flipping it, and selling it. Falls more into an investment. And then I see teaching real estate agents, for lack of a better word, more effective sales. So which one of those things are you mostly, and which one do you want to be in more out of all three of those, if you do?
Oh, those are such good questions. So let me start at the beginning as to why I do what I do now. It's sharing a little bit of my dad's story. So if you don't mind if I start there, is that...
Of course, yeah.
My dad found a niche in the investor side of the business with foreclosures here, where he was, several investors with lots of money, and he bought 890 some odd homes at trustee sale, which is the foreclosure sales here in the Valley. And he helped people with his creativity and his genius take $30 million and turn it into $200 million over a 5-year period of time because of what the market did. But here's what he didn't do. He didn't buy anything for himself.
Why?
At the end of the day, he owned almost nothing because of mindset. Because he didn't start asking the questions, and he didn't start trying to figure out how to make partnerships with people. He was just working for the dollar, which is typical of the real estate business. We get into the business to help people buy and sell homes, but we're never our own client. And that frustrated me as, the last 9 months of my dad's life, as I started breaking his business down. I'm looking around going, you had so much and you missed the opportunity. And now, showing people, including doing it for my family, it's so important to understand. Rob, whenever I speak in a room of real estate agents, do you know the percentage of real estate agents that invest in their own business?
I'm going to, being completely outside of your profession, I'm going to say 25% of real estate agents own an investment property outside in addition to their home.
5%.
Amazing.
5%. I spoke in Vegas a couple weeks ago, 250 people in the room, and there might have been 10 to 12 people that raised their hand that actually own investment properties.
And they may even have lied to you.
And maybe.
Do you know what I mean? Like, right. Because they felt uncomfortable. Well, I mean, like when you're in a room and, you're with a bunch of other people, it's like, who owns real estate? And you're a real estate agent. I would guarantee you that somebody felt inadequate and raised their hands.
Right. So it started making me realize that not that there's a problem, but there's a lack of education, because we're taught to buy and sell, but we're not taught to solve problems and be prepared for opportunities. And so, that's kind of what led me to where I'm at, because traditionally, we still do a ton of representing buyers and sellers in the Phoenix market. And I still love to help my clients. And we also work a lot with investors in showing them how to invest and how to run the numbers and what does it look like and what is it going to take and what's the ideal investment opportunity for you, because the amount of data that I've gone through over the last 5 years and said, okay, these are the ideal rental properties and here's why. And then getting into the coaching, speaking, and doing some courses for real estate agents, it's because I don't want another real estate agent to look back on their 20-year career and look back at all the opportunities that they had to invest in themselves and they didn't take the opportunity, not because it wasn't there, but because they didn't know how.
It's so interesting because, it's like every industry has got this weird, dirty little secret. It's like most chiropractors I know don't go out to a chiropractor to get adjusted. And it's always been weird to me.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like you spend 8 hours a day adjusting people and you don't, like, it's weird. But I guess, there's an old saying my mother used to say, the shoemaker goes without shoes. And there's something about, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the kind of people who find themselves attracted to, they watch $1 Million Listing on television and they find themselves attracted and they're like, hey, I'm going to be a real estate agent. Mm-hmm. But they're just not drinking the Kool-Aid on a deep level and they're missing this opportunity. So I love the fact that you're educating them on something that, strangely enough, they're not getting, and you're finding that people who are not in the real estate business are actually investing more in the real estate business.
Right.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your relationship with your wife. She is a dynamo, and she's the one that's got the tool belt on, and she's the one that's knocking the walls down. Talk to me a little bit about how that came about. I know that she was in the real estate industry, and you guys met. How did you meet? When did you discover that she could swing a hammer better than you? And and what's that relationship like together, working with each other, on flipping houses?
It's interesting that we met in 99, got married in 2000. I'd known her 9 months at the time. And I was actually previously engaged when I met her. And yeah. And it was certainly a blessing. And she's 5 years older than I am. So I found somebody that could essentially babysit me because I needed it. And, Wendy was in the restaurant business. She has a degree. She has a culinary degree and hotel restaurant management. She came from Buffalo down to Florida. And then the restaurant she worked at moved her out to Phoenix in 96. And how we came across each other's paths is my sister was a waitress for her. And so we met, we got married pretty quick, and she wanted to get out of the restaurant business. It just wasn't conducive to what we wanted to do. So she got her real estate license just after we got married in 2000. And she sold traditional real estate. And then when we started having kids, she started doing what we call transaction coordinating, which is basically paper pushing. And she did that. And then she did some of the property management stuff when the businesses were kind of starting to tank. And then she came home and we just kind of did some real estate in the background. She got an insurance license for a little while. And then when we got into the bank-owned business, she took on all the accounting side, because when you do foreclosure business, you're responsible for paying a lot of expenses up front and then tracking your money to get it reimbursed by the banks. And there was some times that we had a couple $100,000 out for reimbursement. So nobody tracks your money better than your wife, because mama needs new shoes. And so
mama needs new shoes.
So we learned a lot in the REO business from the construction side of things, the way things flowed. And then what really brought it about was when my dad got sick, he had a bunch of flips going on and the contractor was terrible. And we started uncovering things. And so Wendy started looking at things and going, no, that's not how that is. And then she started working with the guys. And what was awesome was you get a designer and a contractor that understands both aspects of the house when you get Wendy involved. And when she started doing it, she just had the eye for it. And her, she came from upstate New York. Her brothers are all in construction, and it just was like a natural progression. And she found her niche. She found the things she loved. And what's cool is that there's no ego. She works with a bunch of guys all day long, and she has, she's married to me, so she's got a ton of patience. And she just has created this amazing team and an amazing business around her crews. And she loves them and she treats them with respect. And it's just really made a huge impact on that piece of it. So that's how we came about to where we're at now.
Do you find that there's a challenge with the two of you guys working together? In other words, one of the questions I get asked all the time is, my wife and I work together in many, many different ways, and we're home a lot together. And so, there's a lot of couples that, are in a situation where they either want to be working together or they are working together. It isn't working out. Has there been an evolution for you guys where, it wasn't so easy in the beginning? Or has it always just been, what we see on TV with you two lovebirds?
We've always made a good team, and we've always picked up the slack, and we've always found different parts of the business to be involved in. It's not like we're side by side all day long. She's managing her business, I'm managing mine, and they just work really well together. And that was the thing that we learned from the downturn was, hey, I'm not going to have a construction business that I own and then work it into my clients. Wendy's going to build her own business, and I can refer clients to her, and it makes much more sense in that direction. And so she's running her company, I'm running mine, and they just work together. And so, yeah, I mean, Rob, we've had an amazing 19 years of marriage. We've certainly had our struggles, but she's also an amazing woman that has, I don't want to say learn not to push my buttons, but she's not a button pusher. She's constantly helping me grow and constantly helping me be better in the spaces that I'm in. And we just found separate spaces in the same industry that gives us a lot to converse about, gives us a lot to talk about and a lot to share with people.
What a blessing. It's so few people can say that. So what a blessing. That's great. All right. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk a little bit about the other side of your life, which is sort of non-real estate. And I want to move into talking about fulfillment. So when you look at periods in your life where you felt like you were, in the zone, however you define that, what are some of the daily or weekly practices that you've spotted in terms of pattern recognition that when you look back on those sweet spots, when you've been really performing at your best, really, really well, are there any daily, weekly practices or habits that come to mind that you can identify as consistent?
Consistency has been, it's been a really good practice. I can't say that I'm 100% consistent with it, but journaling every morning, kind of brain dumping, thinking about what the day was before, what today should look like. It's interesting to go back and read stuff from 2016 and see where you were at. And it kind of gives you some markers in life that you can go back and go, oh man, I was a mess that day. But it also gives you some things too that allow you to understand that, hey, you may have had a problem that day and you worried about it and you let time be stolen from you for fearing or worrying, and think about how did that problem turn out? Well, it wasn't as big of a deal as you thought. And so it does give you some mile markers in that. And the other thing too has just been, I think over the last year to 8 months, the gym has, I got a personal trainer, and that's really been fulfilling, getting into that. And then obviously just the practice of church and faith have always been a staple for us.
Are there any positions or opinions in the last few years, it can even be way back, it doesn't have to be in the last few years, that you've changed substantially, where you've shifted your position or you completely changed your mind, where you were like, back then I used to think this way, but now I don't think that way anymore. I think this way. Is there anything that comes to mind in that area for you?
Yeah, there's one particular thing, which was authenticity. When I first got into the business, my dad was always big in being a chameleon. I remember the first time my dad told me that the tattoo I had, he says, you better hope that rubs off. He was always one of those people, like, you have to be who that person wants you to be rather than being who you are, and being authentic with those people. And I also learned that, being in this business, being authentic builds true relationships rather than fictitious relationships that don't stand all the time. Somebody knows if they meet me, I'm going to my next appointment in my t-shirt and my chucks and my jeans. They know they're going to see me that same way no matter where they see me. It's not one persona and then seeing another one. What you see on Facebook is what you're going to get in person. It's trying to make sure that I'm not being that person on and off camera at the end of the day.
Such a great answer. We hold our parents in such high regard, but we forget that they're just people, and they had their own parents, and, they're teaching what they believe was right based on what they saw. And so sometimes it's okay to say, I'm going to take that, but I'm not going to take that. That's
right.
Good.
Yep.
If you could spend 1 month anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
Ooh, I'd go spend it in Greece with you.
It's beautiful. I'm actually booking it as we speak.
I'm sure.
If you could only go to one restaurant before you die, where would your last meal be?
Ooh, Fleming Steakhouse.
Steakhouse is a very popular one. Not that particular one, but that's a steak. People want to go out with a steak. That's interesting. What's the one thing that's rocking your world now that has absolutely nothing to do with real estate?
Teenagers.
Yeah, it looks like you're having a lot of fun.
Oh, we're having a blast.
Yeah, I see that. What is the one thing that you've always wanted to learn, but you just have not gotten around to yet?
Spanish.
That's a popular one too.
Is it?
Yeah, that's a popular one. It's really interesting. Okay, we're going to move into the last section of the show, which is the rapid fire round. Answer as quickly or as slowly as you'd like. It's basically a first thing that comes to mind round.
Are you sure you want that?
Yeah, I do. What would your friends say is one of your superpowers?
Creativity.
What's one of the things you're afraid of right now?
Heights.
What keeps you up at night?
Money.
What do people never ask you, but you wish they did?
Why do you do real estate differently?
What's the one thing that you want to get better at in your life personally?
Time management.
What book have you reread the most?
Probably Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller.
Such a good book. What's your guilty pleasure?
Drinking.
What is one question that you would like to ask me?
How do you have such great hair?
There's 3 different products, but the way that they're mixed together is the secret. We're gonna have to do a hair off. I'll do it when I see you in LA.
Well, let's do it in LA, and you can show me what I need to put in my goatee to make my hair look as good on your head.
Steve, this was absolutely what I hoped it was going to be, and it was amazing. Do you have any final words, suggestions, or an ask for the people that are listening?
Follow on social, Steve D. Valentine on Instagram, Steve Valentine on Facebook. And I think the one big thing is really that people should look at and understand the power of real estate and the power of time with real estate and what it does offer for their long-term investments and their long-term passive income goals.
Well, we are going to, I'm going to dip my foot into that pond when I come out west. I'll be a little closer to you. We'll be in LA in a few months after we take our little European tour here this summer. I think 2020 is going to be about doing some real estate investing. So you're going to be the guy I'm going to lean on.
Can't wait to talk to you about it. Show you what it's all about.
All right, dude. Well, thank you again for everything.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for listening. If you love this episode and you know someone that needs some help in either stepping up their work hard game or their play hard game, it would mean the world to me if you shared this podcast with them to help me get this movement out there. So if you like what you heard, head on over to iTunes, take 30 seconds and leave me a 5-star review, and I will be forever grateful. So until the next episode, excuses are over. It's time to live.